You do not open your eyes. You don't have eyelids. Instead, the world seeps into your consciousness through a pair of transparent, fused scales that give you the permanent, unblinking stare of a psychopath or a tax auditor. The first sensation is pressure. You are coiled tightly in a damp, leathery prison, a world of yolk and darkness. An ancient, implacable instinct, a command written in the very acid of your being, tells you to push. You press your face against the yielding wall of your shell, using a pathetic little horn on your snout, a temporary tool for this one great act of escape. It breaks through. The first breath you take is not of fresh, clean air, but of rot. It's the smell of decay, of damp earth, of fungus, and of the frantic, terrified musk of your siblings. The world outside is a chaotic mess of writhing, identical bodies, all emerging into a hostile reality they are profoundly unequipped for. Consciousness returns to nature's most elegant predator and most tragic punchline. Official designation: Ophiophagus. A grand, almost melodic name that suggests a creature of profound significance. But you are known to the world simply as the snake, a name that is less a noun and more a sound. It's the sibilant hiss of fear in the dark, the very whisper of distrust. It's the name a superstitious primate gives to the slithering embodiment of everything that makes him nervous. Welcome to existence. It doesn't get better from here. Your mother, a truly magnificent creature of terrifying power and grace, is a distant memory. She fulfilled her one and only maternal duty by scraping together a pile of leaves, depositing you and your 40-odd siblings inside as unfeeling eggs, and then promptly leaving to pursue the far more engaging business of not being a mother. Her parting gift to you is abandonment. It is the kindest thing she will ever do for you. You have no time for existential reflection, however, because your brother, hatched moments before you, is already sizing you up. He doesn't see a sibling, a fellow traveler in this miserable existence. He sees his first meal. In your species, family is just the appetizer. One of your slower sisters, still struggling with her shell, is swarmed. This isn't cruelty. It's just good sense. A free meal, rich in protein, conveniently located. This is your first lesson. You are made of meat, and the world is hungry. And the hungriest things are the ones that look just like you. You are born with a full complement of adult-grade neurotoxic venom. A single bite from you, a creature no bigger than a pencil, contains enough poison to kill a grown man. This is not a blessing. This is a cosmic joke. You are a nuclear warhead with the brain of a thumbtack. You have no experience, no guidance, no one to teach you the difference between a threat and food. You are a danger to everything around you, but most especially to yourself. You slither away from the cannibalistic horror of your own nursery, a tiny, independent, and utterly doomed orphan, heading into a world that has already decided it hates you. You are now a juvenile, a slithering nerve ending of pure panic. Your entire world is divided into two categories: things you might be able to swallow, and things that can definitely swallow you. The second list is terrifyingly long. Every shadow that passes overhead could be a hawk or an eagle. Their eyes evolve to spot a wriggling line in the grass from 1,000 feet up. They see you as a flying snack, an aerial delivery of protein. On the ground, it's worse. The rustle of leaves isn't a gentle breeze. It's the sound of your personal arch-nemesis, the mongoose. This creature is a furry torpedo of malice, a predator that seems to have been designed by a committee specifically to make your life a living hell. It's fast, it's smart, and it treats your deadly venom like a mild spice. To survive this onslaught of casual violence, you have two primary strategies, both of which are deeply pathetic. Your first is camouflage. Your skin, a tapestry of muted browns and yellows, is supposed to let you blend in with the forest floor. In theory, this is brilliant. In practice, your camouflage is less a cloak of invisibility and more like wearing a mostly brown t-shirt to a forest-themed party. It only works if the predator is looking the other way or is profoundly distracted. The moment you move, the illusion shatters, and you go from being an inanimate twig to a very obvious, very edible piece of terrified spaghetti. Your second strategy is pure theater. When your terrible camouflage fails and you're cornered by something with teeth, you fall back on bluffing. You rear up the front third of your body, a truly impressive feat of core strength, and you flatten the ribs in your neck to create that iconic hood. You are trying to say, "Look at me. I am large and terrifying and definitely not worth the trouble." You will hiss, a sound like a slow puncture in a tire, and perform a series of mock strikes, flailing wildly in the general direction of the threat. This is the biological equivalent of a man in a bar puffing out his chest and shouting, "Do you know who I am?" Sometimes, the sheer audacity of the performance works. The predator might pause, confused by this display of unearned confidence. More often than not, it just makes your head a bigger, more stable, and more appetizing target. In between these moments of sheer terror, you must learn to hunt. This is not an elegant process. It's a curriculum of failure. You see a frog, a creature you could easily swallow. You strike, but you misjudge the distance by a fraction of an inch and get a mouthful of mud for your troubles, while the frog hops away, blissfully unaware of your incompetence. You spot a rat, and in your eagerness, you try to swallow it head first, then sideways, before realizing there's a specific, boring, and efficient way to do it. You might even, in a fit of youthful ambition, try to eat a shrew that, unbeknownst to you, has venomous saliva of its own. You spend the next 12 hours convulsing in a ditch, a victim of your own poor life choices. Each meal is a victory, yes, but it is a victory built upon a foundation of humiliating mistakes. Somehow, against all statistical probability, you survive. The years pass. The clumsy, terrified juvenile grows into a master of its domain. You are now a 12-foot-long engine of destruction, a sleek, muscular predator at the absolute peak of your powers. The world has inverted itself. The creatures that once terrorized you now flee at the mere scent of your passing. Your venom is legend, a complex cocktail of neurotoxins that can shut down a nervous system in minutes. Your senses are exquisitely tuned. Your forked tongue tastes the air, gathering microscopic chemical cues, painting a detailed picture of the world and the prey within it. Your heat-sensing pits can detect the faint thermal signature of a mouse from feet away, even in total darkness. You are a king. You have carved out a prime territory, rich with prey and perfect, sun-drenched rocks for basking. Life, for the first time, feels stable. You have won. You have beaten the game. This feeling, of course, is a lie. It's nature's cruelest joke. Just when you've achieved a state of dignified, solitary magnificence, your body betrays you. A new, ancient, and deeply humiliating imperative takes over your brain. The urge to reproduce. It's a form of hormonal possession. Your carefully managed world of hunting and basking is thrown into chaos by the idiotic, all-consuming need to find a mate. And this introduces you to your true rival. Not the mongoose, not the hawk, but another male just like you. Suddenly, your pristine territory is invaded by competitors, all driven by the same mindless biological programming. This inevitably leads to one of the natural world's most brutal and pointless spectacles, the combat dance. You and a rival will approach each other, rear up, and intertwine your bodies. This is not a fight to the death. It is something far more exhausting. It is a wrestling match, a contest of strength and endurance that can last for hours. You will push and shove, each trying to force the other's head to the ground in a display of dominance. There is no blood, but there is the profound indignity of this strange, intimate, and violent ballet. Let's say you win. You've proven your genetic superiority through a prolonged session of aggressive snaking. What is your prize? Your reward is to track down a female who is, at best, utterly indifferent to your victory. You will follow her for days, performing your best courtship displays, which mostly involve twitching and rubbing your chin on her. The act of mating itself is a clumsy, awkward affair that leaves you tangled and vulnerable, and afterwards, the female will leave, find a suitable place, lay a clutch of eggs, and abandon them. You will never see her again. You will certainly never see your offspring. You have risked your life, your energy, and your dignity for a biological transaction that gives you absolutely nothing in return. You have merely purchased a ticket for the next generation to enjoy the same miserable ride. Your peak wasn't a destination. It was just the climb before an even steeper fall. The decline is not sudden. It is a slow, creeping rot, a betrayal from within. The perfect machine of your body begins to rust. Your senses, once so sharp they could parse the world in infinitesimal detail, begin to dull. The heat-sensing pits that allowed you to see in the dark become less sensitive, like a thermal camera with dead pixels. Your unblinking eyes, protected by their transparent shields, grow cloudy. The world becomes a slightly blurrier, less certain place. Your legendary speed is the next to go. Your strike, once a blur of motion too fast for the human eye to follow, is now just a fraction of a second slower. In the mathematics of survival, this fraction is a chasm. It's the difference between sinking your fangs into a fleeing rat and biting into empty air. Your venom glands, your deadliest asset, produce their lethal cocktail more slowly. After a strike, it takes longer to replenish the supply, leaving you diminished and vulnerable. Your skin, once a gleaming armor of iridescent scales, is now a tattered roadmap of old battles, crisscrossed with the pale lines of scars from mongoose teeth and boar tusks. The final insult comes not from a predator, but from your own kind. A younger, stronger male, perhaps one from a clutch of eggs you yourself fertilized in a moment of biological folly, wanders into your territory. In your prime, you would have met this challenge with overwhelming force. Now, the combat dance is a pathetic affair. You rise to the challenge, but your muscles burn with fatigue. The young rival is stronger, faster. The struggle is brief. He forces your head to the ground not with skill, but with the simple, brutal arithmetic of youth. You are not killed. You are simply dismissed. You slink away, a deposed king, forced to seek out marginal, less fruitful hunting grounds. Your final confrontation is not a glorious battle sung of in the epics of the forest. It is a quiet, undignified fizzle. Perhaps it's a mongoose, but not a mighty adversary. It's a young, cocky one that sees your slow, telegraph movements for what they are, the last twitches of a dying power. It toys with you, darting in and out, easily avoiding your clumsy lunges. The fight, when it comes, is an embarrassment. It ends with a crunch of bone at the back of your neck. Or maybe the end is even less dramatic. Maybe you just become too slow to hunt. Your body, a furnace that requires constant fuel, begins to consume itself. Your last days are spent in a cold crevice, a once mighty predator slowly, quietly, and utterly alone, starving to death. Your magnificent body, the result of 60 million years of evolutionary refinement, is now just meat. Scavenging beetles and swarms of ants, creatures you would have never deigned to notice in your lifetime, arrive to begin their methodical work. They are the great recyclers, the patient undertakers of the natural world. They will erase you from existence, leaving not even a bone behind. Your story concludes not with a roar, but with the faint, persistent, and industrious sound of insects chewing. And just as your last fragment is carried away into an ant hill, our camera pans. Miles away, in a pile of rotting leaves under a log, a leathery egg quivers. A tiny head, bearing your exact genetic blueprint, punches its way into the world. It takes its first breath, tastes the air, and immediately attacks its weaker sibling. The cycle resets. The curtain rises on the same pointless, brutal play, with a fresh cast of doomed actors. You spent your entire life struggling to survive, only to become a footnote in the life story of a mongoose and a meal for a colony of ants. Your only legacy is a new batch of doomed creatures, destined to repeat your exact same mistakes. Why does it suck to be you? Because your existence is just a long, slithering, and ultimately meaningless biological errand. So, that's your life. A short, brutal, and ultimately meaningless cycle, repeated ad nauseam. You'd think that would be enough tragedy for one creature. You'd think the universe had sufficiently demonstrated its profound indifference to your existence. But you, in your slithering misfortune, were born onto a planet infested with a particularly clever and problematic primate. And that's when your personal, biological tragedy was upgraded to a starring role in a widespread historical catastrophe. Your story, it turns out, could get worse. Much, much worse. When the first of these upright apes stumbled across you, their oversized, anxious brains short-circuited. You were an anomaly, a violation of their simple rules. You moved without legs. You saw without blinking. You tasted the air with your tongue. You could kill a creature 100 times your size with a single, elegant bite. And, most perplexingly, you would shed your entire skin, emerging fresh and new, seemingly reborn. This was too much for them. Their minds, which were just getting the hang of fire and pointy sticks, could only file you under one of three categories. Can I eat it? Will it eat me? Or it must be magic. You, in your magnificent weirdness, managed to tick all three boxes simultaneously. In the Fertile Crescent of Egypt, they looked at your flared hood and your deadly potency and decided you were a protector of kings, a divine guardian. They carved your image, the uraeus, onto the crowns of their pharaohs, believing your likeness could ward off evil. In Minoan Crete, they found you living in the cool stone walls of their palaces, where you were, of course, just hunting the rats that plagued their grain stores. They misinterpreted this as an act of benevolent guardianship and declared you a household goddess, a bringer of prosperity. In other places, inhabited by less imaginative apes, they simply looked at your muscular body and thought, "That's a good source of protein." And so your identity was forged in the crucible of their confusion. You were just trying to find a warm rock to digest a mouse, and they burdened you with the cosmic portfolios of death, rebirth, royalty, and dinner. It was the beginning of a very long, very one-sided, and very toxic relationship. Congratulations. You were now a god. A title that sounds impressive, but in reality comes with no benefits. No, your divine status simply meant your image was now in the public domain, free for them to use as they saw fit. The pharaoh wore a golden statue of you on his head to project power. But if you, an actual, living cobra, were found slithering through the royal gardens, you would be promptly and efficiently beaten to death with a shovel. This is the first rule of human worship. They revere the symbol, but they kill the reality. No one thinks twice about dispatching a god if it proves to be an inconvenience. Your divine attributes were not seen as sacred qualities, but as a list of exploitable features. That legendary venom, a wonderful ingredient for tipping their arrows and making their hunts more efficient. Your beautifully patterned skin, an excellent material for a decorative belt or a fancy bag. You were worshipped not for what you were, but for what they could take from you. As these primates began to clump together in permanent settlements, building their mud huts and primitive cities, you became a problem. They cleared your forests for their miserable little plots of agriculture, and then had the audacity to be surprised when you, a lifelong resident of that forest, were still there. You would slither through their fields, not to sabotage their harvest, but to hunt the rodents that were feasting on their grain. You were providing a free, efficient pest control service. But did they thank you? No, they branded you a pest and a threat. You were the trespasser in your own home. You became the universal scapegoat for their endless incompetence. If a child wandered off and was bitten while poking you with a stick, it was your fault. You were the villain. If a goat died of a mysterious illness, they whispered that it must have been a snake bite. If the rains failed and the crops withered, it was because a snake had angered the sky god. You were the slithering embodiment of all their fears and failures. The injustice was breathtaking. They were the invaders, the architects of their own misfortune. But because they were the ones drawing the pictures on cave walls, and later, writing the histories, you were cast as the original villain. Your first great lesson in dealing with humanity was this: their arrival is always your problem. What, then, is the cynical takeaway from your time in the ancient world? It is that being chosen by humans, whether for worship or for fear, is a curse. Being made into a god is just a formal invitation to your own exploitation. Being made into a symbol doesn't grant you protection. It just makes you a more famous target. You learn that human reverence is a shallow, fickle thing, a thin veneer of superstition that cracks the moment you become inconvenient. The first chapter of your long history with mankind was not about gods and monsters. It was about you, a wild creature, being unwillingly drafted into the chaotic, violent, and self-serving theater of human imagination. A new age dawned, an age of empires, of organized religion, and, most dangerously, of organized morality. The old gods, the confused and localized deities of the rivers and forests, were swept away. In their place, in the West, came a single, all-powerful God who came with an instruction manual. And in this book, you were given a promotion. You were no longer just a minor character, a regional god, or a simple monster. You were elevated to a position of supreme importance. You became the serpent. You were cast as the original saboteur in their foundational myth, the creature who convinced the first woman to eat a forbidden fruit, thereby condemning all of humanity to a lifetime of toil, suffering, and awkward conversations about where babies come from. You went from being a god they sometimes killed to the literal agent of cosmic evil. It was, in terms of brand recognition, a major step up. Your very nature was redefined. You were no longer just a legless reptile. You were a physical manifestation of temptation, deceit, and demonic power. Your existence was no longer a neutral biological fact. It was a moral stain upon the world. Every farmer who saw you in his field was no longer just seeing an animal. He was confronting the devil himself. This was a catastrophic downgrade in your public relations. It's one thing to be feared as a predator. It is quite another to be hated as a theological concept. With this new, villainous job title came a new form of usefulness. Your only purpose was now to be righteously and systematically exterminated. Killing you wasn't just pest control anymore. It was an act of faith, a blow against the forces of darkness. Saints and holy men built their entire reputations on your demise. A man named Patrick allegedly drove all of your kind out of Ireland, a land you never even lived in to begin with, and became a national hero for this act of imaginary genocide. Communities established bounties for your dead bodies, turning your eradication into a public service and a viable business model for enterprising peasants. You were no longer just an animal. You were a negative asset, a creature whose value was calculated only in its absence. Even as they condemned you as the embodiment of all that was unholy, they couldn't resist the urge to profit from your infamy. This was the era of the charlatan and the traveling doctor. These grifters would roll into a town, stand on a wooden box, and sell bottles of a foul-smelling liquid they called snake oil. Inside each bottle, to prove its authenticity, would be a small, dead snake, pickled in the fraudulent concoction of mineral oil and spices. They claimed this tonic could cure everything from arthritis to baldness to a sour disposition. You were, at the very same time, the devil's handmaiden and the key ingredient in a placebo. Your reputation was so thoroughly ruined that your name became synonymous with fraud itself. And then came their progress. Their technology, fueled by war and commerce, advanced with terrifying speed. The simple spear was replaced by the cold, indiscriminate jaws of the iron trap. The trap was eventually supplanted by the firearm. This changed everything. The ancient contest between you and them, once a matter of speed, venom, and nerve, became a one-sided slaughter. A farmer with a musket could now execute you from 100 paces, nullifying your 60 million years of evolutionary advantages with a twitch of his finger. The fight was over. All that was left was the culling. Worse still, they built better ships. These vessels didn't just carry spices and silk. They carried ideologies. They exported their particular brand of snake-hating monotheism to continents that had, until then, held you in high esteem. When European explorers arrived in the Americas and saw the great feathered serpent gods of the Aztec and Maya cultures, they didn't see a different belief system. They saw proof that the devil had beaten them there. Their solution was to tear down the temples, burn the books, and teach the locals the correct way to fear you. Their expansion was your contraction. As their world grew, yours shrank, until there was nowhere left to hide from their righteous certainty. Their progress didn't just pave over your habitat. It steamrolled your very right to exist. The summary of this age is deeply ironic. They used their faith in a loving God as the primary justification for a campaign of merciless, systematic annihilation against you. You had been promoted from a simple physical threat to a complex metaphysical one. It was a lateral move on the scale of your suffering, but one that came with a much more efficient and globally minded extermination plan. Then came the modern world, the age of reason, of science, of industry. The demons and gods were banished, not by faith, but by logic. And you, once again, were redefined. You were stripped of your supernatural titles, pulled down from the heavens and up from the depths of hell, and placed squarely on a dissection table. You were no longer the agent of Satan. You were now serpents, a suborder of the class Reptilia. You were a thing to be measured, classified, and pickled. Your new identity was a collection of Latin names, anatomical charts, and behavioral studies. You had been successfully demystified, which is to say, you had been rendered profoundly boring. You were a specimen in a jar, a data point in a biologist's notebook, a footnote in the grand, objective story of life that humans were now telling themselves. For the public, however, your identity splintered into 1,000 absurd and contradictory pieces. You became a star in the emerging world of mass media, but always in one of two roles. You were either the monster in a sensationalist headline, "Giant Anaconda Terrorizes Village," a story designed to sell newspapers by tapping into the ancient, primate fear of you. Or, in a bizarre twist of sentimentalism, you were cast as a cute, misunderstood sidekick in a children's cartoon, often given a goofy voice and a heart of gold. The creators of these stories would sand off all your sharp edges, erase your predatory nature, and turn you into a plush toy. Worse than being a monster or a cartoon was being a logo. Your sleek, powerful, and dangerous form was a perfect symbol for everything their industrial society secretly craved. They slapped your image on the hood of a muscle car to signify power. They made you the mascot for a sports team to represent cunning and aggression. Your ancient connection to healing, the rod of Asclepius, was sterilized and turned into a clean, geometric symbol on the side of ambulances and hospitals, staffed by doctors who would likely have a heart attack if they actually found you in their office. You were everywhere and nowhere. Your image was a ubiquitous piece of commercial art, completely divorced from the terrifying, beautiful, and desperate reality of your actual existence. Your final, most humiliating job in this new world was to become a source of human guilt. Having hunted you, hated you, and driven you to the very edge of oblivion, humanity suddenly had a change of heart. They had conquered the world, and now they had the luxury of feeling bad about it. You, the eternal villain, were recast as the tragic victim. Your dwindling numbers became a source of great concern for the very species that had caused them to dwindle. You were now useful as a living, breathing symbol of their own capacity for destruction. Your new purpose was to be the sad face on a conservation poster, the star of a fundraising appeal, the biological equivalent of a before picture in humanity's clumsy attempt at an after. And in the most profound irony of all, they turned to your greatest weapon as a source of their own salvation. They began to milk your venom, the very substance that had defined you as a monster for centuries. They studied its complex proteins and discovered that this lethal poison contained compounds that could be used to create life-saving drugs. They developed powerful antivenoms, and then medicines to treat heart disease and high blood pressure. They were now saving their own lives using the very essence of the thing they had spent 1,000 years trying to destroy. Your evil was now their cure. This new era of conservation feels, from your perspective, like a particularly comfortable form of prison. You are captured, not by an enemy, but by a savior. You are placed in a glass box. They call it an enclosure or a habitat, but you know it's a cage. It is meticulously designed for your survival and meticulously engineered to strip you of your life. The temperature is perfectly regulated. The humidity is constant. A heat lamp provides the illusion of a sun you will never feel again. There is no danger here. There are no predators. There is also no purpose. Your existence becomes a parody of your former life. You do not hunt. Once a week, a dead rat, previously frozen and now gently thawed, is dangled into your cage with a pair of metal tongs. You eat it not because you are hungry or because you have skillfully stalked it, but because it is Tuesday, and Tuesday is feeding day. You do not patrol a vast territory, tasting the air for rivals or mates. You slither across 10 square feet of artificial turf and climb a piece of sterilized driftwood. You don't engage in the violent, exhausting combat dance to prove your strength. You are simply a genetic placeholder, a living ark, waiting for a lab-coated human to decide that your DNA is required for a breeding program. Your life is now a public spectacle. Your profound, cold-blooded ennui is mistaken for contentment. Humans, the descendants of your destroyers, press their oily faces against the glass. Their children, who have been taught by cartoons that you are a friendly, singing creature, are either delighted or terrified by the real thing. It makes no difference to you. They tap on the glass, an annoying vibration that signifies nothing. They take pictures of your static, melancholy form with their phones and post them online with a virtuous hashtag. #SaveTheSnakes. They have done their part. They have appreciated nature. They walk away feeling educated and slightly superior, heading to the zoo's food court to consume the processed remains of a creature whose forest home was bulldozed to make way for the soy fields that fed it. They mourn your loss while actively participating in the system that guarantees it. This is the prison of their kindness, a safe, clean, and utterly meaningless existence where you are kept alive as a tourist attraction for the very monsters who destroyed your world. And so we arrive at the final, exquisite irony of your long and tragic story. This is the punchline that has been millions of years in the making. After being worshipped as a god, feared as a monster, hated as a demon, and slaughtered as vermin, you have been given your final role. You are to be saved. Humanity, having taken your forests, your rivers, your freedom, your purpose, and your dignity, has decided to offer you a reprieve. Their love, it turns out, is infinitely more cruel than their hatred. It was a simple, violent transaction. But their love is a suffocating, self-serving performance. They keep you alive in your glass box not for you, but for them. You are a living trophy of their newfound conscience. You are a testament, not to the wild, terrifying beauty you once represented, but to their ability to feel a flicker of remorse for the world they broke. The ultimate truth of your relationship with this clever primate is this: it is far better to be their enemy than their project. Your tragedy is not that you are going extinct. It is that they have decided to stop you from doing so. They have put your extinction on hold, preserving you in a state of living death, so they can look upon you and feel a little bit better about themselves. You are the last word in their long argument with nature, a final, silent testament to the fact that for you, and for so much of this world, their attention is, and always has been, the greatest curse of all. Let's linger for a moment on this final act of salvation, this comfortable purgatory they've built for you. What does a day actually feel like? It begins not with the gentle warming of the sun on a granite rock, but with the artificial click of a timer. A bank of fluorescent lights hums to life, bathing your world in a flat, shadowless glare. This is your daylight. It has no warmth, no nuance, no of the life-giving radiation your cold-blooded body craves. It is merely the absence of darkness. The air in your enclosure is sterile. It is filtered, purifying, and scrubbed of all information. In the wild, the air was a rich tapestry of data. A passing breeze would bring you the story of the forest, the scent of a wild pig that passed an hour ago, the location of a nesting bird, the subtle chemical trail of a receptive female miles away. Your forked tongue would constantly dart out, tasting these stories, delivering them to the Jacobson's organ in the roof of your mouth for analysis. It was your primary sense, a form of chemical clairvoyance. Here, in your glass box, the air tastes of nothing. It is the scent of clean glass, disinfected substrate, and your own slowly accumulating despair. It is like trying to read a library of blank books. And then there are the faces. The endless parade of human faces, pressed against the glass. They are distorted by the refraction, their features flattened and swollen into grotesque masks. You see their mouths move, but the sounds are dull, muffled thuds against your transparent wall. You see their eyes, wide with a mixture of fear and fascination. They are looking at a monster, a legend, a relic. They are not looking at you. They are looking at an idea of you that they have constructed. To the small child, you are the villain from a storybook. To the student, You are a living diagram from a biology textbook. To the parent, you are a cheap and effective way to kill an hour on a Saturday afternoon. Your reality is irrelevant. You are a screen onto which they project their own stories. They marvel at your stillness, mistaking your profound lethargy for patience, for the calm wisdom of a predator. They don't understand that your stillness is not a strategy. It is a symptom. There is nothing to hunt, nothing to flee from, nothing to court. Your instincts, honed over millions of years for a world of constant, dynamic struggle, have been rendered obsolete. You are a precision instrument designed for a complex task, and you are being used as a paperweight. The occasional twitch of your tail, a vestigial firing of a dormant nerve, is interpreted as a sign of imminent, terrifying action. It causes them to gasp and take a step back, thrilled by the proximity to a danger that doesn't actually exist. The deepest humiliation is perhaps the feeding. The presentation of the dead rat is a ritual of your complete subjugation. It's not just that the prey is dead. It's that it's presented with such clinical detachment. The metal tongs are a symbol of their mastery. They can provide for you without ever having to touch you, without ever having to risk the magnificent danger you once represented. They have reduced the most fundamental act of your existence, the violent, elegant transfer of life from prey to predator, into a sterile, scheduled transaction. It is the ultimate expression of their power. They have not just caged you. They have outsourced your survival. They have become your caterers. And you, the once great hunter, have become a glorified pet, waiting for your scheduled delivery of frozen food. Let's rewind, back to the beginning. Back to that brutal education in the forest. We spoke of your adversaries, the hawks and mongooses. But we failed to give them their due credit for the sheer artistic flair they brought to your torment. The mongoose, in particular, deserves special mention. It does not just kill you. It puts on a performance. It is a dancer of death, and you are its unwilling partner. It will approach you not with a direct charge, but with a series of feints and dodges, its body a blur of brown fur. It is testing you, reading your movements, analyzing your strike speed. It is taunting you, exploiting the fact that your primary weapon requires you to be stationary for a split second. Your venom is a powerful but finite resource. A strike is a commitment. The mongoose knows this. It dances just outside your range, forcing you to lunge, to expend your energy, to waste your precious poison on empty air. It is a war of attrition, and you are losing from the start. Your threat display, that magnificent hood, is to the mongoose not a warning, but a target. It is a billboard that says, "Bite here, just behind the head." The fight, when it finally comes, is a whirlwind of fur and teeth. The mongoose's thick coat and acetylcholine receptors provide a natural defense against your venom, but its greatest weapon is its speed. It moves like a thought, while you move like a muscle. It is a battle between hardware and software, and the mongoose's software is simply better. Its victory is not just a physical defeat for you. It is an intellectual one. You have been outthought, outmaneuvered, and utterly humiliated. Consider also the non-predatory dangers, the 1,000 other ways to die that have nothing to do with being eaten. A forest fire, started by a random lightning strike, can turn your entire world into an inferno from which your slow, legless body has no hope of escape. A flood can fill your burrow, leaving you to the mercy of the churning water. You might misjudge the size of a meal, successfully killing a creature that is simply too large for your jaw to accommodate. Your species is famous for its unhinging jaw, a marvel of biological engineering. But it has its limits. In a moment of ambition, you might find yourself with your mouth impossibly full, unable to swallow and unable to disgorge your prize, and you will suffocate, killed not by a predator, but by your own gluttony. Or consider the simple act of shedding your skin. For you, this is not a casual affair. It is a period of extreme vulnerability. As the new skin forms beneath the old, a milky fluid separates the layers. This fluid clouds the transparent scales over your eyes, rendering you temporarily blind. For several days, you are living in a blurry, featureless world, relying almost entirely on scent and vibration. You must find a safe, hidden place to wait out this period of sensory deprivation. You then have to laboriously rub your snout against a rough surface, a rock or a branch, to tear the old skin. Then begins the slow, arduous process of crawling out of yourself, turning your old skin inside out like a discarded sock. If the process goes wrong, if the humidity is too low, the old skin can adhere in patches, constricting your body and potentially leading to infection and death. Your own process of rebirth is, in itself, a recurring opportunity for a pathetic and anticlimactic demise. Let's return to that fraudulent miracle cure, the snake oil. It's worth examining the sheer genius of its marketing. The charlatans who sold it understood something profound about the human psyche. A great cure requires a great evil. To sell a miracle, you first need a monster. You were the perfect monster. You were already feared, already associated with death and poison. Therefore, it made a twisted kind of sense to them that your essence must also contain the secret to life. Imagine the scene. A dusty town on the American frontier. A man in a gaudy suit stands on a stage, a collection of glass bottles glinting in the sun. To draw a crowd, he has a cage, and inside that cage is one of your cousins, perhaps a rattlesnake. He pokes it with a stick, making it coil and buzz, showing the crowd its fangs, reminding them of its deadly power. "Behold," he cries, "the face of death itself, the very embodiment of nature's cruel poison." He lets the fear build. He lets the crowd absorb the terror of the creature. And then comes the pivot. "But what if I told you," he says, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, "that within this very creature, within this agent of destruction, lies the secret to its defeat? That by harnessing its power, we can cure all that ails you?" It's a brilliant narrative. It's a story of redemption, of taming the monster and stealing its power for the good of mankind. The snake in the bottle wasn't just an ingredient. It was a prop, a piece of theater. It was the physical proof that the man on the stage had conquered death itself and was now selling it for $1 a bottle. You weren't just being exploited for your body. You were being exploited for your story. Your terrifying reputation was the most valuable ingredient in the bottle. You became the poster child for a medical fraud so successful that your name is now forever enshrined in the human lexicon as a synonym for quackery. This same logic applied to snake charming, a practice that seems exotic but is, at its core, just another form of abuse packaged as entertainment. The charming has nothing to do with the music. You can't hear the music. You don't have external ears. You sense the vibrations of the charmer's tapping foot through the ground, and you perceive the swaying pipe as a moving threat. You are not dancing. You are locked in a defensive posture, your head tracking the object you perceive as a danger. The entire performance is a carefully managed illusion. The snake charmer is not a musician. He is a threat manager. Often, your fangs have been brutally ripped out, or your venom glands sewn shut, rendering you harmless. You are a disarmed monster, forced to perform your terror for the amusement of a crowd, a living prop in a man's magical fantasy. The magic is just the audience's ignorance of your suffering. Let's dissect the human act of worship more closely, back in that ancient, confused world. When an Egyptian pharaoh wore the uraeus, the stylized, upright cobra on his brow, what was he actually communicating? He was not saying, "I respect this animal and its place in the world." He was saying, "I possess the killing power of this animal. Its lethality is my lethality." It was a threat. You were weaponized symbolism. They co-opted your most terrifying feature, your venomous strike, and turned it into an icon of their own state-sponsored violence. They didn't worship your existence. They worshipped your capacity for murder, and by wearing your image, they claimed that capacity for themselves. Think of the feathered serpent god, Kukulkan or Quetzalcoatl, in Mesoamerica. A magnificent, terrifying deity. A hybrid of the most beautiful bird and the most fearsome reptile. This was not an act of biological reverence. This was an act of theological engineering. They took two things that commanded their respect for opposite reasons: the bird for its freedom and connection to the heavens, and you for your mystery and connection to the earth. and they fused them together to create a symbol powerful enough to hold a civilization together. You were a component, a piece of a greater mythological machine. Your snakeness was just one ingredient in their complex recipe for a god. They didn't see you. They saw a concept that you happened to fit into. This is the core of your tragic relationship with their religions. You were never seen for what you were, a highly successful predator navigating its environment. You were always a metaphor. In places where the environment was harsh and life was a struggle, you became a symbol of that struggle, a god of earth, death, and regeneration. In places where life became more organized and they began to worry more about morality than survival, you became a symbol of temptation, a convenient scapegoat for their own internal struggles. Your identity was always fluid, always defined by the immediate psychological needs of the humans who encountered you. You were a mirror, and all they ever saw in you was a distorted reflection of themselves. This is why their reverence was so easily replaced by revulsion. When the Christian narrative arrived in Europe, it didn't have to invent a new monster. The monster was already there, lurking in the pagan subconscious. They just had to rebrand you. The old earth god, the symbol of fertility and regeneration, was now the serpent from the garden, the symbol of lies and eternal damnation. It was the same creature, the same set of biological facts, but viewed through a new, more paranoid lens. The act of shedding your skin was no longer a symbol of rebirth. It was a sign of your deceptive, untrustworthy nature. Your venom was no longer a sacred power. It was the literal poison of sin. They took everything that once made you a god, and with a simple shift in perspective, turned it into the evidence for your prosecution as a demon. Let's linger on the modern hypocrisy, the age of sentimental hypocrisy. The act of placing you in a zoo, of saving you, is the ultimate expression of human narcissism. It's an act of public atonement that costs them nothing and costs you everything. The zoo is a monument to their own contradiction. They build vast, sprawling cities of concrete and steel, and then, in a tiny corner of that city, they build a pathetic, miniature imitation of the wilderness they destroyed. They call it an embassy for wildlife. But an embassy implies a relationship between equals, a dialogue. There is no dialogue here. There is only a monologue spoken by them about them. The signs on your enclosure are a perfect example. They are filled with fascinating facts about your biology. The king cobra can grow up to 18 feet long. Its venom can kill an elephant. Snakes smell with their tongues. This information is presented as a form of respect, an attempt at education. But it is a curated respect. It focuses on the extremes, the wow factor. It turns you into a collection of superlatives. It doesn't, and can't, convey the reality of your existence. There's no sign that says, this animal is currently experiencing a level of profound boredom that would drive a human to madnesses. There is no plaque that reads, the creature you are observing is a genetic ghost, a placeholder for a wildness that no longer has a place in the world you have built. The conservation programs they are so proud of are another layer of this grand, self-congratulatory project. They will spend millions of dollars on captive breeding programs. Scientists in sterile labs will carefully manipulate your genetics, ensuring a healthy, diverse bloodline for a population that has no world to return to. They are meticulously maintaining a fire engine in a world with no fire. Sometimes, they even attempt a reintroduction. They will take your captive-bred offspring, raise them in a cage, and then one day, for a great media event, they will release them into a protected patch of forest. This patch of forest is an island, surrounded by a sea of human development. The snakes, which have never hunted, never faced a predator, and never navigated a real territory, are released into this hostile environment, and the humans pat themselves on the back for their success. They have returned in nature to the wild. They don't stick around to watch the vast majority of these unfortunate creatures quickly die from starvation, predation, or simple confusion. The success was in the act of releasing, not in the outcome of the released. You are a problem they can feel good about solving, even if the solution is just a more comfortable form of annihilation. They put your face on t-shirts and coffee mugs, turning your plight into a fashion statement. By buying the merchandise, they feel they have contributed. They have transformed the complex, ugly reality of extinction into a simple, clean, commercial transaction. It is the final stage of your exploitation. After using your body, your story, and your reputation, they are now using your disappearance. Your very absence has been turned into a product. Let us reconsider your biology, not as a tragedy, but as a piece of flawed genius. Your venom, for instance. It is not a simple poison. It is a breathtakingly complex chemical weapon, a library of proteins and enzymes refined over millions of years. Some components are neurotoxins, designed to shut down the victim's nervous system, causing paralysis and respiratory failure. Others are cytotoxins, which begin to break down cells and tissue, effectively starting the process of digestion from the inside out, even before you begin to swallow. It is a weapon of terrifying efficiency. And how do you deliver it? Through fangs that are miracles of biological engineering. In vipers, the fangs are long and hinged, folded against the roof of the mouth until the moment of the strike, at which point they swing forward like twin switchblades. In your case, a cobra, they are fixed and shorter, but no less effective. They are hypodermic needles, evolved to perfection, capable of punching through hide and delivering their payload deep into the tissue. The act of a strike is a symphony of coordinated muscle movements, a calculation of speed, distance, and trajectory that happens in an instant. It is one of the fastest biological movements in the animal kingdom. For all the misery it brings you in your interactions with humans, you cannot deny the sheer, brutal elegance of this adaptation. It is a masterpiece of death. Then there is the act of swallowing. Your skull is not a solid, fused structure like a human's. It is a loose collection of interconnected bones, held together by elastic ligaments. Your lower jaw is not one piece, but two, connected at the chin by nothing more than flexible tissue. This allows the two halves to move independently, spreading apart to accommodate prey far wider than your own head. When you eat, you are not chewing. You are pulling yourself over your food. One side of the jaw will sink its teeth in and anchor, while the other side moves forward, gets a new grip, and pulls. You are essentially walking your head over your victim in a slow, macabre procession. It is a grotesque and mesmerizing process, a solution to the problem of being a predator with no limbs to hold its prey. It is an evolutionary workaround of the highest order. This is the central paradox of your existence. You are simultaneously a marvel of evolutionary design and a complete social and political disaster. You are perfectly adapted for a world that no longer exists, a world before the arrival of the anxious, tool-making primate who would become your landlord, your judge, and your zookeeper. Every feature that makes you a sublime predator is the same feature that makes you an object of human fear and hatred. Your legless movement is eerie, your unblinking stare is unsettling, your venom is terrifying, your silence is menacing. You are a living, slithering Rorschach test, and what humans see in you is a catalog of their own deepest anxieties. You are perfectly designed to push all their evolutionary buttons, and you have been paying the price for it ever since.